And now we move into our first panel for the comeback for Greece and Cyprus. Averof Neofytou, president of the DISY party in Cyprus. Then we will also be joined by Nikos Papathanasis from Greece via the internet, and Philippos Soseilos, of Chairman and Chief Executive of PwC Cyprus. Perhaps you'd like to come and join me. And we begin with Averof Neofytou, president of the DISY, which is the same party as the president of Cyprus. Do you wish to speak up there, or as you like?
Ladies and gentlemen, it's a great honor and a pleasure to be here today for this prestigious summit, and I would like to thank you for this opportunity. Things have been difficult for all of us in the past 2 years. The pandemic came to challenge our ordinary way of living and things we took for granted for years. At the same time, Europe is currently facing one of the most difficult times in its recent history. Times that call upon to show unity, courage, and to place our common values above all, without considering temporary costs. We all condemn the Russian invasion in Ukraine in the strongest possible terms. Russia's invasion is more than an attack on Ukraine. It is an attack on every free country's right to decide its own future. Unfortunately, as Cypriots, we know firsthand what war and being refugees means. And we are experiencing the tragic consequences of war for almost the last 50 years, the illegal occupation by Turkey until today. As Cyprus, though, is in line with the West and shows its solidarity to the Ukrainian people, the West and Europe should also follow the same values and principles and not use double standards in its treatment of the Cyprus issue. Values should be placed above all and should never be discounted. Another point that the current situation has highlighted, and I would like to stress, is the importance of energy and the energy security of Europe, which is also under threat and needs to be addressed. Energy is not only a factor for the economy, it's the real factor for security and stability in Europe. Dear friends, in the years before the pandemic, with hard work and decisiveness, Cyprus had managed to fully reverse recession and fiscal deficits. We are used to big challenges and big crises in Cyprus. And the crisis in 2013, the banking crisis and the fiscal crisis, was an opportunity for Cyprus to make radical reforms for the stability of the economy. Our economy enjoyed continuous upgrades by the international rating agencies, and our country's credibility had been regained again. Once more, Cyprus reversed the effects of another crisis, the time of the COVID-19 pandemic. And we are in the right way due to the resilience for our policies. Economic activity in Cyprus had a recession of 5.1%, much below the average of the European Union. And at the same time, in 2021, the growth of our economy was 6%, much higher than the average in Eurozone and in Europe. And we project in 2022 to have a strong growth as well, despite the negative impact on the Cypriot economy because of the war in Ukraine. But this is not the time to be satisfied, though. This is the time to continue further with all the necessary reforms for a truly modern and friendly state for our citizens and the business sector. And I'm more than sure that we will get there. We have recently proceeded with a great number of important reforms, such as the reforms of the local government. We should continue on this path with emphasis on reforming the public sector, the justice system, and the digitalization of our country for the benefit of our citizens and the business environment. I heard the High Commissioner of Cyprus to the UK mentioning what we studied in the 80s, the universities, location. I can tell that it's a time to talk about technology. In America, they have the Silicon Valley. We have a vision for Cyprus to become the tech island of Europe, and we implement certain policies, and we believe that we can host the tech companies and Cyprus to be, for the next decade, the tech island of Europe. Also, our strategic objective remains to continue the macroeconomic, fiscal, and financial stability of our countries. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you once more for the opportunity to be here, and I'm looking forward to a lively discussion. But before I go, we are in London, and I want to share with you the feelings of the Cypriots. And the Cypriots, they don't like much the British. Because of the history. But at the same time, every Cypriot would like to spend a weekend in London if they can afford it. At the same time, every family has the top priority to send their children to study in UK if they can afford it. And thirdly, every summer, the hoteliers and the catering industry are waiting the British to come. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Neofytou. I'm reminded when I first looked into the what we call the Cyprus problem, that I talked to both sides, and both sides disagreed with each other completely, except on one thing. They all agreed that the problem was caused by the British. Now we are going to be joined, we hope, if the technology works, by Mr. Papathanasis, Alternate Minister of Development and Investments from Greece. Please.
Good morning. Thank you. Thank you, John. Good morning to the distinguished panelists. Good morning to the ladies and gentlemen. I would have liked to be there with you. I had to cancel an already booked flight because an unforeseen official event. But as you said, John, technology is here to assist so we can communicate as effectively as possible. And as we are emerging, and actually this the 6th London Business Summit with a title taking trade and investment to the next level, concerning actually Greece, Cyprus, and UK, is I would say at the right point, at the right moment, that as we are emerging from COVID. We are experiencing a military invasion, and of course, all three countries are condemning the invasion, standing in solidarity with the Ukrainian people. And I would say that all three of us have stood in the same side, in the right side of history throughout times. So as we are emerging and experiencing this war, of course, Greece is moving forward in a reformist, in a reform plan that has actually started 2.5 years ago. When this government, the government of Kyriakos Mitsotakis, won the elections and have promised that will create a very friendly environment for businesses to join and be established in Greece. And these reforms actually had to be based on foundations of trust between the state and the businesses. And in order to accelerate the Greece's recovery, they had to create by an ecosystem of laws and investment-friendly environment. And I think we are doing very well in that, as these investments actually create a multiplying effect. And we see that very clearly in the decrease in unemployment, that I would say drastic decrease of unemployment that is actually reaches the highest percentage in the European Union. So it's not a matter of luck. What we have done these 2.5 years, it's a matter of planning, and our growth projections would reach for 2021 and 2022 at a projection of 12.5%. Actually bouncing back, recovering from the effects of COVID in 2020. 2021, it was a very good year. So we've covered this gap that we had experienced in 2020. So, but at the same time, interesting times, challenging times, and the pandemic had been a catalyst for many important changes globally, but in Greece, to be specific, we have gone far beyond our expectations of the people, and we have already created processes that assist as ambassador, as the ambassador mentioned before, large investments, I would say technological protagonists to come and be established in Greece. We have digitized many of our procedures of the public sector. Actually, many things could be done through a digital process now. And we have reduced all the steps needed for an enterprise, for a business to start and begin its operation. We have also moved, we have provided incentives, we have reduced corporate tax rates, dividend tax rates, and we have provided over depreciation for digital and green fixed capital investment. Now, in order to go very fast through this ecosystem of laws that target growth, I would say that all of this, all of the ecosystem is based on the National Recovery and Resilience Plan, on the Industry 4.0 Action Plan, and the guidelines of the Partnership Agreement 2021-2027, as well as the new Regional Aid Map that assists Greece to give higher incentives as we have gone through a very serious financial crisis the last 11 years. So we have built a flexible framework for both private and strategic investments, and we have moved on very fast to the delignitization program, as our Prime Minister had declared, and the UN back in 2019, that Greece will go as fast as possible to this just transition program. So we are the first ones to move and I think Europe is watching us. And we want to fulfill all of our obligations by 2028. So the basic tools, we have the strategic investment law tool that simplifies procedures, introduces attractive incentives for FDIs, and includes new categories, as well as provides support for important projects of common European interest, one being the battery, hydrogen, microelectronics. We are all in. Greece is participating in these IPCIs. And we continue with the incentives, providing FDIs with stabilization of tax rates, acceleration of depreciations, fast track licensing, and grants, of course, related to the RRF framework when it comes down to emblematic investments with a very important impact in the economy. The second tool is the new development law, it also fully aligned with all this national recovery, the RRF and the Industry 4.0 and the partnership agreement. It actually includes 13 state aid schemes that support all sectors of the Greek economy. Needless to say that these state aid schemes are supporting agro-food industry, digital transformation, and all these that are projected in our action plan and the National Action Plan for Growth. The third tool is the Just Transition Plan tool that we have provided the incentives for companies to be established in these areas in order to change into a lignite-free future. As I said, at the latest by 2028, and also we have created a new legal framework that sets actually strong governance in order to run fast and to conclude this process by 2028. We would like to create jobs that would replace the jobs lost as the lignite production is being decreased to go to zero, to go into a fast and quick transition, and of course to face all the social and environmental issues that are raised through this transition process. Now, we have all this ecosystem stands in order to provide support for FDIs. And as I said, the ambassador mentioned companies that have decided to come and be established in Greece. And actually in the EU, in the European Investment Monitor, Greece has improved its attractiveness by ranked now globally 23rd. Actually moving approximately 9 positions higher. In the last 2.5 years, multinational firms, and there we have to say that especially technological firms, because they find talent in Greece, because Greece does provide talent. It has universities and it has technical STEM graduates that are being hired by these companies, but also it is very important to say that companies like Microsoft, Pfizer, Cisco are hiring Greeks that have moved away from Greece during the financial crisis. So we are actually reversing a brain drain that has we had undergone this 11 years. And I would say also that about 15 to 20% of the people hired in these companies come are Greeks that come from abroad. So also we have said that we want Greece to be an energy hub, and of course we welcome the completion of the TAP pipeline, the transatlantic pipeline, and the progress on the interconnector of Greece and Bulgaria that is set to become operational in 2022. Also, we are moving forward to the FSRU in Alexandroupoli, as we would like to be as independent as possible from Russian gas. And of course, we support the 3+1 format with the Cyprus, Greece, and Israel, with the presence of the United States in the Eastern Mediterranean pipeline. So I would like success in today's forum, and I think this forum is organized at a very challenging and diverse times. Thank you very much, John.
Thank you, Minister. And our third speaker is Philippos Soseilos from PwC.
Thank you, John.
Please
go there. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends. It is a great pleasure to be with you today to share my thoughts and reflections and to participate in the discussion with the very distinguished panelists. In my intervention today, I will provide a brief update on the Cyprus economy, including the impact from the war in Ukraine. I will talk about the longer-term growth strategy for Cyprus and reflect on the current pace of change and its impact on business. We're living in very interesting times. To say that we experience continuous disruption and change is to underestimate the obvious. Having only a few days ago completed the 2-year anniversary of a global pandemic, we are now facing a new global crisis, this time of the geopolitical type. From a business perspective, having lived through the accelerating effects of COVID on workplace transformation and digital adoption in general, we are now observing new phenomena like state sanctions actually triggering rapid self-sanctioning from business itself. This is a clear case for the increasing impact of ESG factors and of stakeholder views on corporate decision-making. Another clear observation is that companies are making major strategic decisions with unprecedented pace. In this new world that we're living, the speed of decision-making and the pace of execution is becoming a clear source of competitive advantage. I believe this realization has a huge impact on the way we lead our organizations and on the necessary cultural attributes that we need to have for success. Cultural attributes that include trust, innovation, and new forms of collaboration. I will come back to this point at the end of my intervention. So let me zoom in on Cyprus now. Already a few statistics have been shared. Last year, 2021, the Cyprus economy pretty much recorded a very strong bounce back of 5.7% growth. We've heard about this. But the point is that it has fully regained the negative growth of 2020. So effectively, we are back at the size of the economy of the pre-pandemic levels of 2019. In addition, fiscal performance indeed has improved on a number of indicators. And the Cyprus economy has traditionally been having strong links with Russian business activity. So inevitably, the current situation is having an impact on the economy. But the assessments that have been made already is that the impact on a GDP growth forecast is currently an estimated of about 0.5 percentage point reduction from previous estimates, very much in line with the UK and Eurozone growth adjustment forecasts. So the adjusted forecast is now expected in the range of 3 to 4% for 2022. And I think an interesting point is that end of business on Friday, just before this weekend, the rating agency Fitch, having had 3 full weeks of the war impact to us to make a new assessment for Cyprus, effectively maintained the assessment of Cyprus, the rating, and also the stable outlook for the Cyprus economy. So, of course, uncertainty remains in terms of the duration of the war, the duration of the sanctions, the possible escalation from sanctions. But generally, in terms of the exposure of the Cyprus economy, beyond the inflationary impact that all the economies are facing from high energy, commodity, and food prices, clearly the sector that will have the biggest impact is the tourism sector, as Russia has been the second largest source of tourists for Cyprus at approximately 20% of the overall tourist arrivals. So clearly the restrictions of flights, the depreciation of the ruble, and general negative climate can safely lead to a near zero tourists to be expected from this market. However, Cyprus should still achieve higher tourism activity relating to the year before, as strong demand for tourism in the post-pandemic period from other countries like the UK, which is our primary source of tourists, as well as other markets that have been developing, Germany and of course Greece and other markets, should offset the decline from Russia. So overall, a growth in the tourism revenues and arrivals should be recorded compared to last year. Now, regarding the banking sector, it is important to acknowledge that no immediate critical impact is expected. There is a session later on that. But Cyprus banks are highly liquid, highly capitalized, and are significantly less exposed to Russian business than in the past. Some impact is expected in operating profits from the slowdown of the transactions, from international transactions. And the most significant impact will be on the acceleration of bank consolidation, something that is generally considered, of course, as favorable and desirable. Now, on the real estate sector, the rising construction costs and the reducing Russian demand will impact that sector, primarily on the luxury end of the sector. And on the professional services, those professional services that have been supporting Russian business activity primarily will undergo a shock and will need to adjust to the new circumstances, with the overall medium-term impact on this segment to depend on the effectiveness of this transition. Now, on the opportunity side, the renewed emphasis for EU countries to reduce the dependence on the natural gas from Russia will put renewed interest for a faster exploitation and leveraging of the gas reserves of the Eastern Mediterranean region. And this does create a hope for Cyprus, but clearly a strategic rethink is needed and decisive political action will need to be taken. Overall, what this new crisis has highlighted, yet again, is the need to accelerate towards a more diversified, agile, and productive economy. To this end, we are proud that as PwC, we have conducted an EU-funded study for the long-term economic growth strategy for Cyprus. As a result, Cyprus now has an inspiring vision 2035. And that vision is to be one of the world's best countries to live, work, and do business in. This vision is supported by a new economic growth model based on 3 pillars: on becoming Europe's business and trade hub, where Cyprus is the best place for Europe for headquartering, or the world's dream remote working location for digital nomads, and also an investment hub for funds and shipping industries and other industries. Also, another pillar is to be a leader in sustainability, for the development of the green economy, renewable energy, cyclical economy, smart cities. And a very, very important pillar, and Mr. Neofytou pointed to it, technology, is to be a high-tech capital of Europe. Development of niche high-tech services in e-health, agri-tech, green technologies. Interestingly, in the last few days and weeks, we have actually seen increased demand for tech companies to be relocating to Cyprus, and that is a very clear vision for Cyprus that is materializing. Beyond vertical initiatives on industry basis, a great emphasis was placed on developing a number of horizontal initiatives focused on fixing long-standing structural weaknesses in the economy so as to help it become more competitive, resilient, fair, and productive. And to that end, we will be absorbing the 1.2 billion euros from the EU Recovery and Resilience Funds that already are channeled into the economy and are channeled specifically towards the reforms that support that Vision 2035 and the growth strategy of Cyprus and support the reforms and the digital and green transition more specifically. So Cyprus is in a great path for a new growth trajectory, and this period does afford us an excellent opportunity to rethink and reconfigure our economic and business models, both as countries and as businesses. So in this constantly changing environment, we all need to adjust and transform rapidly. I come back to the point of speed, again for countries and businesses. And the question really is how rapidly can we transform, and what does really rapid mean in our paradigm thinking, in the way that we approach decision making and execution. Talking about change, now there are expressions like three-dimensional change, that the change we're experiencing is both perpetual, occurring all the time, pervasive, unfolding on multiple areas of life at once, and exponential, this accelerating point. And just to conclude my thinking, all this does bring a major focus on the importance of leadership to navigate our countries and our businesses through this new reality. Change by nature, of course, leaves people and organizations feeling confused, vulnerable, and fractured at a time when resilience, cohesion, and collaboration are what they're really necessary to perform at the highest level. So we need to help our countries and businesses move away from a more linear and locally way of thinking into more systemic way of thinking. And there's an evolution of how we think about this change in leadership, that we need to ensure that we have trust and psychological safety to empower individuals and teams to perform, that we have continuous learning to fuel that pace of change, and that shared purpose and common values enhance focus, cohesion, and resilience. So generally, as my final thought, is one of the greatest lessons that we've had from navigating through this continuous crisis in Cyprus is that fostering collaboration between the public and private sectors has proven that it can achieve great results. So we have a responsibility not only to transform our country and our economy and our businesses, but to actually pivot to a new reality, and we should pivot together. So once again, thank you for giving me the opportunity to address this summit. I look forward to the fruitful discussion.
Thank you very much. Well, we have just about 20 minutes for comments or questions from anybody who wants to ask comments or questions. If I can abuse my position as chairman by asking one question of Mr. Neofytou, if my information is correct, I think you may be your party candidate next year for president. What I would be very interested is to know whether you have any hopes of reviving the talks on the Cyprus problem.
Our vision is to work hard to unite our divided island. The prospect of a united Cyprus is much bigger. We have to have great visions for our countries, and personally I know that great visions cannot fit in divided countries. We've been talking about energy. We see what is going on in Europe. And I mentioned in my introductory remarks that energy is not only a tool for economic growth, but it's very essential today for political stability. It's a pillar for security. Eastern Mediterranean has a prospect in the energy sector. Once we find a way for cooperation among all other countries, Israel, Cyprus, Lebanon, Egypt, Greece is planning for explorations. We need a cooperation among all the countries at the same time. We have to find realistic routes for the natural gas. If we succeed to solve the Cyprus problem, we have to consider all options for the development of the energy sector. We see what is going on now with the cold, we have a new Cold War. I assess that pretty soon the battles will stop in Ukraine, but the economic war will continue. We have to solve the problems instead of trying to find problems in any solution. As Cypriots, we have to clarify what do we really want. It's not enough to blame the British. By blaming, you don't solve the problems. You have a self-satisfaction that you express your feeling. And since I am in London, I don't consider the British as the devil. But I believe that the British could contribute in solving the Cyprus problem. UK is the guarantor. At the same time, according to the Treaty of Establishment, they have two military bases in Cyprus. Their presence in Cyprus is connected directly with the existence of the Cyprus Republic. And I believe it's for the benefit of the British Cyprus Republic to continue. Ideas of two-state solution are not workable. Europe could not accept two states coming from a small island to be members of the European Union. At the same time, the unacceptable two-state solution will have the British in a vacuum. Therefore, for me, it's a top priority, the solution of the Cyprus problem. And in Cyprus, I repeat it frequently, I consider the best and the most drastic reform in Cyprus the solution of the Cyprus problem. In a region with a lot of turbulences in the Middle East, you see what is going on in Syria, what is going on in Iraq, in Libya, what is going on in the yard, in the neighborhood of Europe in Ukraine. Cyprus must be united, not only for the Cypriots, but for the region as well. That's why, for me, it is, and will be my top priority to solve the Cyprus issue. And I know that perfect solutions are only for the academians and they're there for theory. We have to be pragmatic. Without risking the future of our people, we have to find the viable compromise in order to secure the future of our citizens. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm looking to see if anybody has a question. I have one more question. Yes, please. There. Is there a microphone? There probably is.
You can hear me.
There is a microphone because it's easier for the recording, and then you can say who you want to ask the question from.
Yes, quick question for Mr. Soseilos about his comment that the Ukrainian crisis may be a catalyst for further consolidation in the banking sector in Cyprus. How is this going to be trickier and why? Okay,
I'm of course aware of developments that I won't be able to really disclose, but there is an existence of a number of banking institutions that would benefit from further consolidation more generally. And I think there's a wider view that more globally banks would benefit from more regional and global consolidation. So the direction of travel is very much in joining forces and investing in the transition that the banks within the financial services sector need to be taking. So a lot of smaller banks don't necessarily have all the necessary investment to accelerate in the direction that should take. In Cyprus specifically, any opportunity from any crisis to move in that direction is taken. So I think it becomes a catalyst just because there are pre-existing trends already in place. It's not that the crisis specifically is necessarily the one that's creating it. It presents another opportunity to move another phase forward in that consolidation.
There was quite a lot of consolidation after
already.
2013.
That's right.
But
it continues.
You're suggesting more is needed.
More is needed and it's continuing, yes, indeed.
Please.
The war in Ukraine will change a lot of things in Cyprus. For almost 2 decades, the accountants, the lawyers, and the Cypriot economy had a dependency on Russia. Game is over. And for me, this is not a threat. This is an opportunity for Cyprus to get rid of any dependency from Russia, economic or political. Whether some people like it or not, it will become a reality pretty soon. Pretty soon in all sectors. In tourism, in services, in banking, everywhere. And we have to seek for new opportunities for Cyprus. That's why I mentioned that Cyprus could easily become the tech island of Europe. We have already introduced, and we announced a certain policy to give a lot of incentives. So far, our policy was to give incentives to the owners of big companies to use Cyprus as a tax residence. Now we focus on giving incentives for the companies for relocation of their business in Cyprus by giving incentives to the employees of the companies. But back to the Russian factor. Cyprus, I believe, that will benefit of what is going on in Ukraine. It gave us the opportunity as a European country, as a country that we belong to the West, not to play in that ball. The destination of this country has been decided, and I mentioned this yesterday in my speech in the party congress. We are members of the European Union. We belong to the West, and we have to behave so.
And I wanted to ask both ministers, and perhaps also Mr. Soseilos, you talked about the Recovery and Resilience Fund several times, and of course there are discussions in Brussels about whether to have another round of common borrowing, but there seems to be a north-south divide. The northern countries like Finland and the Netherlands don't want to have another round of common borrowing. Do you think the north-south divide in the Eurozone is troubling for your countries? Perhaps Minister Papathanasis could comment on the north-south divide in the Eurozone. You're on mute, I think. Yes.
Well, the Prime Minister has already set six issues to be discussed in the summit, the European Union summit. One of them is to finance and to create a fund for this particular crisis. Of course, as we stand together as European Union, we have to continue on discussing. As you remember, and as the distinguished participants and attendants remember, the discussion for the Recovery and Resilience Fund had started about 3 months before it was created. At the beginning, there was a high resistance, but at the end, Europe, as it always happens, finds its way to find a solution in a problem. So the Recovery and Resilience Fund was in discussion before it was actually decided, and at the beginning there was opposition to create this fund. So since we are in the midst of the problem, I believe that the discussion will continue, and I believe at the end we'll reach a point. Although at this moment, I think they are focusing on the Recovery and Resilience Fund as it continues to have available funds. But I believe at the end the discussion will prove to be correct, and the issues that the Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis has written will be put on the table and will be discussed further.
Do you have a view?
Europe has to borrow again for the member states to fight against inflation. The cost of living in every household in Europe, due to the high prices of energy, and we need a European common policy to support the households in Europe. The majority of the households, they're facing a lot of financial problems. The cost of the electricity bill, the cost of necessities. Therefore, we have to face these financial difficulties that affect the ordinary people.
Yeah,
the north-south divide.
Yeah, okay. That we've been experiencing forever, but I think since we have made so much progress already, I think there's a lot of evidence on the positive impact that, for example, the Recovery and Resilience Fund is having on economies of the South. And I think that evidence needs to continue being made very, very clearly, because the channeling of funds where the economy structurally needs it most really will accelerate a better cohesion for European Union. And I think that is an argument should fuel it. And in fact, now with the new crisis, we have new needs for recovery, new needs for investing in the resilient side of economies. So that divide should move away, in my mind, from just the arguments and go into the substance of the European point. I'm realizing that we're going to run out of time very soon, and I just wanted to make a point, adding to what Mr. Neofytou said earlier on. I think there is a very clear opportunity indeed that is happening in Cyprus right now, from the fact that we have been investing in the last few years, almost a decade now, in decisively moving the economy into a space of really being an economy of real investment into the real economy. We've attracted a lot of foreign direct investment. There has been a lot of reforms already in place, and a great vision and a great determination to continue in that direction. So all the associations of the past that have kept the Cyprus economy not fully utilizing its great comparative advantages are in fact in our past, and increasingly we want that credible story and the future valid economic growth looking towards the West to be very much part of our future narrative.
Just a small
Please,
comment.
one more comment.
For the economist, what I mentioned about the inflation and the need for European funds to tackle it could be sounded very strange, but I have to clarify that the inflation that we have today is not as a result of increase of the demand. And when the inflation is a result of increase of the demand, you eliminate the funds that you have in the economy. But nowadays, the problem with the inflation is because of the increase in the energy sector. And we have to assist the households, otherwise we'll face a lot of social issues.
We're pretty well out of time now. Maybe we should move on to the next panel. I think, no, I don't see any hands. Very good. Well, thank you very much to all three of you. Thank you, Minister.